Hello there and welcome to another episode of the Kids Media Club podcast. I'm your co-host Andy Williams and I'm here with Joe Redfern.
Hello there, I'm Joe Redfern, and once again we've got Emily, who's becoming a regular feature on our Kids Media Club podcast because we love chewing the fat about all things that are happening across kind of Netflix and in the creator economy with her. So we thought we'd kick off today by talking about Netflix. So say hello, Emily, and let's kick off with this week's news from Netflix.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, guys. As an independent media consultant, I really welcome the opportunity to talk with actual people about stuff because I'm such a solo operator quite often. So thanks for having me back. But yeah, busy week at Netflix Towers. And it's worth saying that all of this is leading into the earnings call, which is next week. I don't know if it means there'll be no news at the earnings call or they've already done all their news in advance. But we'll wait and see. So a couple of things that are happening. Knives Out 2, Glass Onion is getting a theatrical release. Now, it's not a big theatrical release, but it's definitely more than what Netflix have done before, which is a limited theatrical release. I think it's hitting about 600 cinemas in the US with the short window to Netflix. So that's, people have said that they'll never release titles theatrically, and I think we're starting to see the thaw of that a little bit. They had made lots of statements that said that they were quite adverse to it, but they're seeing the at least wanting to test in different strategies and stuff like that. In addition to that, then there's been a number of announcements about their ad tier. They've announced the pricing of it. I think it's going to be $4.99 in the UK, $6.99 in the US. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be like a lower tier where you pay that fee a month. You have ads, and I also think actually the quality that you're going to get, the quality available in that tier is going to be pretty low, like 720p, which
it's not going to be.
Yeah, it's not going to be HD, which is like, who doesn't watch stuff in HD these days? And my dad doesn't. So maybe, I don't know. Maybe stop password sharing with him and he can get his own Netflix account.
That looks like a mistake, I think, to me.
Yeah, it's a bit.
I mean, if you're going to be watching Netflix and it's not going to be as good quality as your phone.
Well, maybe it's a marketing tool that like you'll be like, oh, I'll just sign up and I'll give it a go and I'll get into Stranger Things and then I'll get frustrated because it looks a bit rubbish on my TV and I'll trade up. The gossip, the word on the street is that, and Netflix has said this definitely isn't happening, by the way, is that the introduction of the ad tier is essentially going to mean a price hike on the premium tier. Like that's what will come. Whether it's next week at the earnings, don't think so, but it's in the future and not too far a future is what they are thinking. So involved in that ad tier expansion has been a number of deals that Netflix have done with measurement boards, because obviously when you're buying ads, when you're a marketeer spending money on ads, you want to have it independently verified that you're getting the value for your money. So Netflix have announced a partnership with Nielsen in the US. That like the relationship with Nielsen, I would have observed had been a bit adversarial at one stage a few years ago. It's definitely become cozier over the last year. We've seen Netflix reference Nielsen's The Gauge, which is like Nielsen's kind of measurement of like where viewing is coming from in terms of linear VOD, etc. In some of their, the statements that they've made. Actually the Netflix, the pivot on Netflix content performance metrics changed. Was it at the end of last year or this year to be kind of in line with the Nielsen measurements too? So minutes of content viewed. There seems to have been a little bit of a cozying there, which is obviously netted out to this deal that they're doing. Obviously, Netflix have Microsoft running the ad sales for them, and Nielsen will be independently verifying that in the US, and then
they signed up to Barb in the UK.
Yeah, the UK they've signed up to Barb. Yeah, so and again that's kind of from the ad tier point of view.
I saw it very much as an ad tier thing because it's been reported in the press as it's Netflix trying to play nice with the regulators in the UK, and I'm sure there's a dimension of that. But I think
totally.
the big push is that they need Barb to kind of support their ad tier, really.
For sure. And I wonder what the reaction of the other commercial broadcasters will be in terms of the effect it has on the net value of ads, certainly in the UK. I imagine there's been some tense conversations this week in terms of, how they're going to compete with Netflix ad sales.
Yeah, definitely.
Netflix are pricing their ads pretty high, I saw, though. There's been a lot of comment in marketing and ad circles that they've been surprised at the price point. I mean, I think it makes sense because it's a premium product, but they're definitely pitching it at kind of more of an expensive ad sale.
Well, it's kind of the basics of negotiation. Go high, and then if you go in low, there's only one place you can go. If
exactly.
you go high, you got space.
Yeah. And I did hear they're going for a fairly kind of only five or six ad slots an hour, so they're not loading it from the off. So in terms of, they're almost giving it premium ad space, a premium ad space vibe from the off. But obviously, like you say, they can start high and come down if that doesn't work.
I'm quite excited about the ad tier option for Netflix, partly because I think the challenge for a lot of shows on Netflix is how people discover new shows, and I think the ad tier gives them a platform to be able to control that a bit more than they can do on their own, on their kind of main platform. Because, as I understand it, not all of the shows are going to be on the ad tier. So you have an opportunity to window shows and to take shows out, and I think with having advertising on there, it also opens up space for more cross promotion of shows in a way that's slightly more difficult on their kind of core platform.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one to see. I mean, I know I'd spend marketing money to get my show advertised next to like the biggest Netflix show that's going at a given time, for sure. Yeah, and then the other thing that happened this week is they launched, just taking it back to the kids section, they launched Spirit Rangers from Chrisney. This is, like, Chrisney did a big deal with them a number of years ago. From it, we've seen Ada Twist, Ridley Jones, Dino Daycare was the one that was axed in the kind of great axing of 22, which was really, really brutal because it sounded like a lovely show. But Spirit Rangers maintained. So it's based on, it's kind of like Native American mythology meets PJ Masks. And it's run by, the creative team behind it is all really authentic, and the voices they have behind it on the creative side, writing, animating, everything is all really Native American, brings people from that background into the fold of a show of this level. So it's been a great calling card for that. The thing I found weird then on that regard is I switched on my Netflix to watch it, which is in British English because my husband can't stand listening to Thomas the Tank Engine in American. He just, it's kind of, it's very triggering for him. So we have our Netflix in British English, which I don't usually notice. I just put on the show. The show is the show, and we got Paw Patrol in English and in British English. And Spirit Rangers was in British English, which I found very strange for a Native American show, which kind of got me thinking all over again, because I do think about this periodically, about whether there is that need to hyper localize or not. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
That's an interesting question, and it comes up so much in program development.
Does it?
Yeah,
you'd know
tons. So I think the assumption is that you have to default to it being transatlantic or American, really. Even if it's an English production, just because that's seen to, if it's very local, it's still perceived as being an obstacle to international sales. Ultimately, would you agree with that, Jo?
I think the tide might be turning in terms of this huge trend that we see certainly across social media and in kids is that niching, finding your niche is the way to build a community and build a fandom. And you can't build a niche if you make something as generic and almost, I'd say the word bland, but you know what I mean, to appeal to as many people as possible. Certainly Gen Z and coming down towards Generation Alpha, kind of kids and teens of today, they like their niche. They like to feel like they've got a tribe and they belong. And we're seeing that coming through in, a lot of ways through gaming and content. So I actually think that it is changing a little bit. I think Bluey has done huge amounts for becoming a globally popular show, or certainly an internationally popular show, that's got an Australian accent and a vernacular and terminology that previously would have been, kind of edged out in favour of that American accent. I think, we were talking about this earlier in the week. I think when the local element is intrinsic to the storytelling, then it occurs to me, Emily, that's why it probably jarred with you with Spirit Rangers, in that why would a British English accent be, dubbed over content that ostensibly is about American Indians, kind of Native Americans?
Yeah, Native Americans. Yeah, no, that was so. It's just because, everything about the look of them, and Native Americans for kids as well. Kids, that's something cool that they. I was very weird.
I mean, I think on some level, the local just means authentic, doesn't it? It just means that it kind of it's specific, and it feels like the right kind of way of approaching that story. So if it's the Native Americans and it's in an English accent, then it's...
Yeah, and I think that is something that is really important to kids. You ask them what they find most, appealing about the YouTubers like Mr. Beast. It is this authentic connection. They feel like they've got a real, genuine connection to this person. So actually, if you're going to put a barrier in front of that, then I can see that is how it might have jarred for you, Emily.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing that they've done.
I mean, I can see, I can understand particular preschoolers that, having people that sound like them on a show, whether it's US or a British or more kind of a locally English accented dub. I often think it's either American or not American. Do you know what I mean? If you think of even Puff and Rock, right? You guys would find Puff and Rock closer to home because it's got Chris O'Dowd with his massive Irish accent on it. I do get that there's that value of kids feeling in their niche show, but somebody that sounds like them is somebody that they're going to identify with a bit more. But I just think that there are times when you need to make the call, that you just need to own it, And I think that's with Bluey. I think Bluey owned it. Bluey was nah, it's Australian. That's who he is. He sounds like this, and that's the whole thing. And I would say probably when Disney Plus took the series, there might have been a bit of research done and a bit of a couple of focus groups to see what the feedback was on that. And ultimately, the choice was to kind of be brave and double down. And I think there's moments where you need to do that, whether it's a call that comes from your gut because you think something and that something's going to be more hysterical in an Australian accent. I mean, pretty much most things are. I always find Australians have a very fabulous intonation of just kind of that something dry about the way they deliver anything, which I really appreciate. But or it's more of I think this is a bit more of a kind of a cultural call to be we've invested in this show. It is supposed to be this thing. Let's just not do the British dub on this one because.
Sorry.
No, just to jump in, because going back to that niche point and finding your tribe, I think it almost does a disservice to the other elements that play into that. It boils it down to just the accent you hear. Well, that's not exactly what kids look for when they're trying to find something that they relate to. And, they might resonate with someone who doesn't sound like them, but they find a point of commonality, and that is what they find. That's where they find that authenticity, and that's where they find that, that's someone like me, or I've found my tribe.
Someone I aspire to, or whatever, yeah.
Exactly, yeah, but that's not all dependent on an accent.
Yeah, I mean, what I find really interesting in the Bluey example is that you could totally... Bluey's a kind of show that you could very easily have gone the Paw Patrol route and and they could have had kind of transatlantic American accents. And it doesn't feel like that would have been kind of, that there's anything inherently in the show that you would say, no, that's a kind of terrible decision. But you're right, the kind of the writing and the way the jokes land, you can tell that the creators, that it's in their voice, really. And I think that is very hard to put a kind of a value on when you're trying to justify stuff in the kind of meeting rooms or you're kind of pitching a show. But I think the audience can tell. They can tell when the voice of the creator is kind of in sync with the way the characters speak. I think you totally had that with Peppa Pig. I remember when I was at Nickelodeon, and Nickelodeon did have they had a kind of a moment where they redubbed all of the Peppa Pigs in American accents.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But it just didn't land even in the States, because Daddy Pig sounds very different with an American accent than it does with a
Pig.
Yeah, with a British accent. And so that kind of, and I think that does kind of stop the show from landing a lot of the times, and people kind of sometimes can't put their finger on exactly what's changed. But when they then reverted back to the English original English voices, it was a big hit in the States. I mean, you've got Quentin Tarantino saying it's the greatest British import for 20 years.
Oh my God, that's a good one. It is funny. I think the bottom line is, I think it's a call. Like, it's not, because I was turning it over in my head and I was like, oh, maybe Peppa and Bluey were like, maybe they worked because they were like, they're animals, right? So they're not as culturally specific. And then I was like, but hang on a second, Paw Patrol, they definitely said that having that British dub kind of helped to travel a bit more kind of successfully. So, I think it's just, it's a call, and, but I think it needs to be thoughtfully turned over, and I'm not sure they arrived at the right outcome for Spirit Rangers, because I think, it's such a Native American show, like, let it be what it is, Yeah, and I think like in terms of authenticity, Joe, something that we were talking about as well, sorry, it just reminds me of like this kind of idea of like creator, like, the creator economy, kind of bringing out content and having that kind of authentic angle to content, and kind of, the accent thing kind of comes into play there a little bit as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think you look at the popularity of Mr. Beast and the Sidemen. They've built huge followings online out of this kind of very authentic, close connection that they've built between them as YouTubers, as their audiences. Now, it seems crazy talking about authenticity and niches and finding your tribe when Mr. Beast has got one of the biggest channels on YouTube, but that's just a testament to the size of that tribe and that community that he's built. But it's given them such power, and power almost to not have other people making those calls that you just spoke about, Emily. Nobody at a studio tells Mr. Beast what to do. He's still very much in charge of his own brand and what he does. He branched out into chocolate. He launched Feastables, which, is in every Walmart in the States, actually prompted by the fact that he has I've forgotten it. He's got some issue with his digestive tract. So actually, a lot of his those chocolate bars were created with a view to having reduced allergens.
Yeah.
You know what? He's sold millions of them off the back of that, because people again relate to him and they appreciate that level of authenticity that he's taken into his chocolate bar range. He didn't just license it to a manufacturer and send it off into stores. So that in and of itself has such power. He's released the Mr. Beast burger. They had 10,000 people in a queue to get a burger when he went into, to serve them. And now he's building this huge studio of his own, which takes him into another league in terms of this media business. There's another YouTuber that he's friends with called Mr. Who's the Boss, who did a tour around this studio facility that he's building, and it is something that most movie studios would envy. But again, it's testament to the power of this community and what he's built on the back of this authenticity and direct connection with his community. Again, Andy, we spoke a couple of weeks ago about he's hinting that, you know, if he took what he knew about content creation and community building and applied it to animation, the mind boggles at what he might achieve.
I kind of feel like we've hit creator economy, like, I want to say 2.0, maybe 3.0.
Yeah.
Like, it started off, like, and you talk about that authenticity and those accents and, you know, being your true self. And, like, I think back to, like, there's a name for the crew and I can't think of it, but, like, you know, there's Zoella, Joe Sugg, like, Casper Lee, like, that whole crew who came up really authentically, like, on the rough ride of YouTube's ascendancy. And like you say, maybe the deals that they did at the time when they were, like, you know, when they were at the height of their popularity weren't, you know, the most authentic, or, you know, maybe the purest expression of what authenticity could be wasn't yet known, right? So it's not a criticism of what they did at the time. It's just kind of the first iteration of it was, you know, super drug boxes that were probably a bit overpriced, and you know, just those are the first steps into what this could look like. And then you kind of had the great consolidation attempts by, you know, multi-channel networks to like maker studios and stuff like that, to like pull in, like, yeah, we've got 10,000 creators on our roster, isn't this great? Like, and I know they did some investment in studios and stuff too. But now you kind of have like creators, which is the right place where it should be coming from, really reiterating again themselves what this could look like in a really real way that's sticking so well. And I completely agree with you, Joe, that, you know, the potential of them to apply their understanding of their community and their audience to any genre, if it's channeled the right way, you know, and like, obviously, and I think they get that now. It's like the Sidemen releasing vodka doesn't make them vodka experts, right? Like they are YouTube experts, but you know, and channeling towards, let's say, creating a cartoon doesn't make them cartoon experts, but like if it's channeled correctly, that has real potential.
I mean, I think what they both have is that the audience relates to them in a way that they just don't relate to people on kind of traditional TV.
And they relate to the audience.
Yeah, totally. And there is an element with YouTube where I think everyone watching understands that they could easily set up their own YouTube channel. So when they see Sidemen and they see kind of everyone sharing this house, that's a classic thing which I think lots of kids grow up thinking, wouldn't it be amazing if when I grow up I can just live with all my mates in a big house? And that's kind of what they can do, really. And it's very relatable. I think that's a kind of real strong part of their success, I think.
And I think you're right. You know, talking about Zoella, you're right. I think it was pretty bruising as you know, Zoella and Casper Lee grew up through that, because they almost, you know, the more traditional way of licensing their brands got hold of them, and they thought, well, this is how we do it, and it didn't work. Again, it fell foul of that lack of authenticity that kids have, this pinpoint radar to see right through. You know, I still remember being in Vegas at the licensing show, even a few years ago now, and hearing a talk from a beauty YouTuber, and I did that awful thing of having a preconceived notion of this, you know, beautiful blonde teenager that walked onto the stage, and I didn't expect her to say anything very insightful, and boy, how wrong I was. She sat there and she very, very eloquently spoke about she knows exactly the time to post her videos because she's so across the data. She knows when most of her audience are online. She knows what they expect and when, how long. She knows which parts of her videos track best. And she told a story of how she'd been offered a 6-figure sum to promote an electric toothbrush by some, I don't know, you know, big corporate, and she turned it down because she knew that her audience would see through that inauthenticity if she all of a sudden held up an electric toothbrush and said, hey guys, this is my new favourite thing. And she turned it down, and I was absolutely blown away with how these creators, these ones that have grown up natively on YouTube, they've cut their teeth on it, they are so instinctively in tune with what their audience wants. Actually, you can see why they don't necessarily feel the need to go to big established agencies to do these things now. That's why Sidemen are doing their own vodka. It's why Mr. Beast is doing his own Feastables, because they know better than the people who have done this for 20 years. Because
and I think that's a real difference, really, between that first generation of vloggers and this generation. My sense is that the Zoella and the kind of the first generation of blogs that kind of arose, they ended up being managed by people that took quite a kind of traditional talent management approach. And I feel like Mr. Beast and Sidemen, they're sort of being managed by people that understand the world a lot better.
For sure.
Definitely. And it's interesting though as well from the kids' point of view, because this is an area I think Pocket Watch has kind of been in for a number of years, and it's a bit trickier when you're going with younger kids for lots of reasons, you know. And I think they've done the right thing in terms of, like, you know, Ryan Kaji's like Nickelodeon show, like they haven't necessarily, you know, when it's young talent, you know, it's a different way of channeling it, but it is kind of the same. It's kind of the same thesis. Do you know what I mean? That we can take this creator who knows their audience to make, you know, alternative content, you know, alternative content moments, etc. It's just when you think about it for the older kind of generation or older folks within the creator economy, it's being able to tap into them as grown-ups, if you know what I mean, and their understanding of that young audience, which I think is so exciting and like has such potential.
And I do, you know, I think we'll see them grow and evolve as creators and people as well. It was interesting this week. I saw that the first of the Sidemen to become a father happened in the last 10 days.
So and after a football match, I was like, dude, you should have been with your wife.
But yeah, so, you know, came out of the charity soccer match. Wife gave birth, you know, he was there with the baby on his chest. But, you know, again, I think they're all also open to growing with their audience. And again, this is why I think, you know, at some point they'll get into kids' TV because they're all going to have kids. And it's going to become really important to them. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Interesting.
I read, just one final thought on that. I read that Mr. Beast was offered something like $800 million to sell the Mr. Beast brand, and he turned it down.
Of course he would. Why would he?
He's going to be the first $1 billion brand. There you go. There's the forecast.
Yeah. I mean, crazy that someone would think that he might get rid of it for that amount of money.
Yeah.
You know, it seems crazy.
Moving on from the YouTube stuff, it kind of brought into mind what we talked about with Roblox and what the opportunities were for brands, do you think, in kind of that space? Are there any brands that you feel like aren't kind of moving into the Roblox space or haven't yet that there'd be a real opportunity for? That's kind of it's your area, Jo.
Well, you know, going back to both chatting about Netflix, which we did at the top of the show, and more latterly creators, you know, it would surprise me if both of those didn't move towards Roblox at some point. You know, we've seen with Netflix, you mentioned Ridley Jones, Emily, you know, we saw a few years ago Netflix starting to seed them out onto their YouTube channels. So they went onto YouTube and they've started premiering that as a funnel back into the rest of the series. It worked a treat, and now it feels like Netflix have fully embraced YouTube as a way to premiere and debut content. There's no reason that similar things couldn't happen with Roblox. You know, particularly with their kind of teen stuff. You know, you could create an area in Roblox. You could put behind the scenes stuff. You could have Q&As with, you know, some of the talent. We know that Spotify, an audio platform, has created Spotify Island for that exact thing. You know, they can run concerts, they can do things on there that can be a funnel for young people through to their main platform. And I don't see why someone like Netflix couldn't utilize that and leverage that.
I'm like going onto Roblox right now to be like, is Winx Saga not on there? Because that is so should be on there, right? I think in 10 years we'll see like the Mr. Beast of YouTube, or maybe it won't be Mr. Beast, maybe it'll be like the Zoella of YouTube. You know what I mean? Like, but that first, like 10 years from now, the first wave of originated IP from that platform will be in the landscape. I can't tell you what shape that will take, but it has to happen, I think. What do you think, Jo?
I mean, my bet for the next biggest franchise is that it will be born on Roblox. I mean, I think it's, you know, you look at Adopt Me, which has had about 30 billion visits. You know, it's ostensibly, you know, you hatch eggs, you collect little animals, you grow them, you know, you feed them, you collect your little group of animals. You know, that's huge. I would be absolutely amazed if they hadn't already done a deal for an animated spin-off. I know for a fact they're looking at licensing because they just took a licensing person on a couple of months ago. You know, this is a brand that has 30 billion visits on Roblox, and I would imagine there's a fair few kids that are now asking their parents, you know, when can I get an Adopt Me kind of, you know, shirt, duvet set. You know, it's so it will come. It will definitely come, and that would be my bet actually, is that the next big franchise will be born on that platform.
And we saw a little bit this week with the news of Kulabi being bought by Talent House. You know, so Kulabi, everybody will know them for the clangers, but actually, where they're kind of hot right now is what they're doing on Roblox with shows like Warrior Cats and stuff like that, and it kind of shows that, you know, I thought that was it. That was an interesting story this week, and everyone was like, the clangers, and you're like, no, guys, it's not the clangers. Like, just, I love the clangers personally, but it's not about the clangers, lads. Like, it's about Roblox.
Yeah, for sure. You know, Talent House are a tech company, and that's where they specialise. And they will. I mean, Warrior Cats. I don't know any stats on it, but I know they've got a huge online fandom already. So again, it would be crazy for them not to take that and then build it out onto Roblox. Let's finish off just with teen movies. We were talking about, Emily, which I know is one of your favourite genres.
Oh, so yeah, teen movies on Netflix. Like, I know, like, all that news about like ad tiers and subscriber numbers in the UK and you know, theatrical releases and Barb integration, Nielsen integration is like, I know that's like kind of big, but like actually the big news is I saw some talent move from Netflix where Niketa Maddox has moved on. She was really instrumental in the tween movies. We don't call them tweens anymore, but you know, the kind of movies for young people, I say, and that makes me sound old. You know, she had overseen movies like Tall Girl, and so I was interested to see her move on. I hope it doesn't mean that Netflix is moving away from their teen movie strategy, because I kind of feel it's one of the things that they've done really, really well that no one else has done, is create a content melting pot of traditional format content for teens and tweens. We know they're on YouTube, we know they're on Roblox, we know they're on TikTok, etc. But like just traditional format, you know, movies, series, they've done really well. They kind of have teen movies that start, you know, you can watch it with your little sister because it might feature Sophia Carson, it might be about, you know, dancing, and then that will funnel up to the Never Have I Evers, it'll funnel up to the Kissing Booth, it'll funnel up to the Princess Switch, and then that will funnel up to Stranger Things, it'll funnel up to Shadow and Bone, the Winx Saga, Wednesday, the new Addams Family spin-off coming. So I think it's a really smart thing that they've done well for a long time, and I know I understand it to be quite intentional. Teens think Netflix is cool, and if you've ever been considered cool by a teen, you'll know how hard that is. And that kind of future-proofs their subscriber pipeline, basically, because then they move on up with it into their 20s and whatever. So I hope the talent move of Niketa Maddox isn't indicative of any sort of implosion happening there, because that would seem to me to be a bad thing for Netflix, honestly, you know, and for teens, you know, in terms of having that kind of that
and
space.
she's gone where?
Universal.
So do you think it might be a sign that Universal have spotted a niche that they could own?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, who knows? She's obviously a very talented exec, and you know, she came up around at Disney and etc. So, you know, she's hot property. Like that's like fair play. Go get that. Go get that recognition. You know. But it just, you know, in the realm of the overall Netflix content offering for young kids or for young people, I just thought I was like, okay, well, let's just keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, because Netflix managed to, I think, really revive that genre of teenage movies that kind of got forgotten about, I think.
Totally. Yeah, and they've done it really, really well and really successfully. So, and it's efficient, right? It's got to be efficient in terms of costing and stuff. So I just, let's watch this space.
And are there any contenders to come in and replace her at Netflix, do you think?
I don't know. I couldn't say. Obviously there's a whole there's got to be a whole team there that have been outputting this. It hasn't just been under the stewardship of a sole person. So potentially people, like the backgrounds there, and obviously like with shows like Wednesday coming out, like their servicing of the teen audience isn't coming off the boil, obviously. So I think we just need to wait and see. But it's something they've done really well. And I just, I don't know, I'm just a bit twitchy from the year. It's like, don't implode. We've just had a few of those happen amongst the streamers. So I just get twitchy when I start seeing people moving.
Be interesting to see what she does at Universal. I wonder if there's anything coming through for kind of Gabby's Dollhouse and the actress that plays Gabby.
Yeah, who knows? Let's wait and see.
Definitely one to keep an eye on. Okay, I think we've covered all of the news that's fit to print in kids media this week. Thanks very much for joining us again, Emily.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's good to speak to people.
Thank you very much for listening in. We'll be back again soon.
Thank you. Bye.
And if you enjoyed the podcast, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a nice review. Thanks very much.